Have you ever noticed that the people we admire the most aren't the ones who never failed? They're the ones who refuse to stay down. Failure has a strange way of making us question everything. It whispers that we're not good enough, not smart enough, not talented enough. And if we listen long enough, we begin to believe that our biggest setback has become our identity. But what if failure isn't the end of your story? What if it's actually the beginning of the person you're meant to become? The truth is, success doesn't belong to those who never fall. It belongs to those who find the courage to stand up one more time than they fall. Every great leader, every entrepreneur, every athlete, and every dreamer has faced moments when giving up seemed easier than moving forward. So today, let's talk about how to overcome failure, silence the voice of self-doubt, and keep moving forward, even when life gives you every reason to quit. Failure has a way of making us believe a lie. The moment something doesn't go as planned, we begin to question our abilities, our intelligence, and even our worth. We stop saying, "I failed," and start saying, "I am a failure." Those two statements may sound similar, but they couldn't be more different. One describes an event, the other defines an identity. And the moment you confuse the two, you hand your future over to a single moment that was never meant to define you. Think about how often we attach labels to ourselves. We fail an exam, and suddenly we think we're not smart enough. We lose a job, and we convince ourselves we're not capable. We start a business that doesn't work, and we believe we're not meant to succeed. But failure is an experience, not a permanent description of who you are. It is information. It is feedback. It tells you that something didn't work the way you expected, but it says nothing about your value as a human being. The problem is that our brains are wired to protect us from pain. When we experience failure, our minds try to avoid that feeling from happening again. Instead of encouraging us to learn, they often encourage us to quit. We tell ourselves that if we stop trying, we can't fail again. It feels safe. But safety isn't always where growth happens. Growth happens when we become curious enough to ask, "What can this experience teach me?" instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" Imagine a child learning to walk. That child falls over again and again. No one watches a baby fall and says, "Well, I guess walking just isn't for you." We expect the falling because we understand that it's part of learning. Every stumble teaches balance. Every failed attempt strengthens muscles. Every fall brings the child one step closer to walking confidently. Somewhere along the way, we stop giving ourselves that same patience. As adults, we expect perfection immediately. We believe that one mistake means we should have known better, been better, or done better. But real growth doesn't work like that. Learning has always involved mistakes. Every skill you've ever mastered began with awkward attempts. Every achievement you've ever reached started with not knowing how. The difference between beginners and experts isn't that experts never failed. It's that experts learn from thousands of failures that most people never saw. Look at the people you admire, whether they're leaders, athletes, entrepreneurs, artists, or innovators. Their journeys are filled with moments that looked like defeat. They missed opportunities. They made wrong decisions. They faced rejection. They doubted themselves. The world usually celebrates their victories, but rarely sees the years of disappointment that shaped them. What made them successful wasn't an absence of failure. It was their willingness to treat failure as a teacher instead of a judge. Failure provides valuable information if you're willing to listen. It reveals weaknesses that success often hides. When everything goes well, there's little reason to question your methods. But when things fall apart, you're forced to examine your choices, your preparation, your habits, and your mindset. That process isn't comfortable, but it's incredibly valuable. Without failure, improvement becomes almost impossible because you never discover what needs to change. There's another reason failure feels so personal. We often tie our identity to our results. If we achieve something, we feel worthy. If we don't, we feel inadequate. That creates an exhausting cycle because our confidence becomes dependent on outcomes we can't always control. Sometimes you can do everything right and still fail. Sometimes circumstances change. Sometimes timing isn't in your favor. Sometimes life simply doesn't unfold according to your plans. None of those situations erase your potential. Your identity should never be built on temporary results. It should be built on your character, your values, and your willingness to keep learning. Results come and go. Success comes and goes. Even confidence rises and falls. But your commitment to growth can remain constant regardless of what happens around you. One of the healthiest questions you can ask after any setback is, What is this trying to teach me? That simple shift changes everything. Instead of looking for someone to blame, you begin searching for wisdom. Instead of protecting your ego, you start developing your abilities. Instead of feeling trapped by disappointment, you become empowered by possibility. This mindset doesn't remove the pain of failure. Disappointment still hurts. Rejection still stings. Dreams that don't work out still leave scars. But pain and meaning can exist together. The experience may be painful, yet still valuable. The setback may be difficult, yet still necessary. Many of life's greatest lessons arrive disguised as moments we never wanted to experience. When you stop seeing failure as evidence that you're not enough, you become free to take risks again. You become willing to speak up, even if your voice shakes. You become willing to try something new, even if you might not succeed immediately. You become willing to chase opportunities that once seemed too intimidating because you no longer believe that failing would destroy your identity. Confidence isn't built by avoiding failure, it's built by surviving it. Every time you recover from a setback, you prove to yourself that you are stronger than your circumstances. You begin trusting your ability to adapt, learn, and continue. That kind of confidence cannot be given by praise or taken away by criticism because it comes from experience. The next time life doesn't go according to plan, resist the temptation to define yourself by that moment. Separate who you are from what happened. Your mistakes are real, but they are not your identity. Your setbacks are real, but they are not your future. Every failure carries information that can make you wiser, stronger, and more prepared for what comes next if you choose to see it that way. Pain is one of the few experiences every human being shares. It doesn't matter where you come from, how successful you are, or how confident you appear on the outside. At some point, life will test you. You'll experience disappointment, rejection, loss, betrayal, or failure. The question isn't whether pain will come. The real question is what you'll do when it arrives. Will you let it shape you, or will you let it stop you? Most people spend their lives trying to avoid pain. We distract ourselves, deny it, or pretend it doesn't exist. We tell ourselves to move on before we've even understood what happened. But ignoring pain doesn't make it disappear. It simply buries it deeper, where it quietly influences our decisions, our confidence, and the way we see ourselves. What we refuse to face eventually finds another way to demand our attention. Accepting pain is not the same as accepting defeat. There's a big difference between saying, "This hurts," and saying, "This is where my story ends." One statement acknowledges reality. The other surrenders to it. Strong people aren't those who never feel pain. They're the ones who have the courage to admit they're hurting without allowing that hurt to define every decision they make. Think about what happens when you suffer a physical injury. If you break your leg, you don't pretend everything is fine. You acknowledge the injury. You get treatment. You give yourself time to recover. You understand that healing requires patience. Emotional pain deserves the same respect, yet so often we expect ourselves to recover from emotional wounds overnight. We judge ourselves for feeling sad, discouraged, or afraid, as if those emotions are signs of weakness instead of signs that we're human. Pain has a purpose. It tells you that something important has happened. It forces you to slow down and pay attention. Sometimes it reveals what truly matters to you. You only grieve deeply because you cared deeply. You only feel disappointment because you had hope. You only experience heartbreak because you opened your heart in the first place. Pain reminds us that we were willing to invest ourselves in something meaningful. The danger begins when pain becomes our permanent address. There is a difference between visiting pain and living there. Everyone has difficult seasons, but some people unknowingly build their identity around those seasons. They replay old failures, revisit old betrayals, and relive old disappointments until those experiences become the center of their lives. They stop introducing themselves by their dreams and begin introducing themselves by their wounds. The human mind is powerful, but it follows the stories we repeat. If every day you remind yourself of everything that went wrong, your brain begins searching for more evidence that life is unfair. It notices every setback while ignoring every opportunity. It magnifies every mistake while minimizing every success. Eventually, pain stops being something you experienced and becomes the lens through which you see the entire world. Acceptance breaks that cycle. Acceptance doesn't mean approving of what happened. It doesn't mean saying the loss was fair or the failure was deserved. It simply means refusing to fight reality. The event has already happened. No amount of wishing can change yesterday. Energy spent arguing with the past is energy unavailable for building the future. One of the hardest lessons in life is realizing that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about learning to carry your experiences differently. Some scars never disappear completely, but they don't have to control your future. They can become reminders of what you've survived instead of reminders of what you've lost. They can become evidence of resilience rather than evidence of defeat. There will be moments when moving forward feels almost impossible. You'll wake up with the same heavy thoughts. You'll question whether you'll ever feel like yourself again. Progress during those moments often looks incredibly small. It might simply mean getting out of bed, making one phone call, applying for one opportunity, or taking one step you didn't feel like taking. Those small actions matter because they interrupt the belief that you're permanently stuck. Healing is rarely dramatic. It's usually quiet and gradual. One day you realize the memory doesn't hurt quite as much. Another day you notice yourself laughing without forcing it. Weeks later, you find yourself making plans again. None of those moments erase the pain completely, but together they remind you that movement is possible even when it feels slow. Many people wait until the pain disappears before they allow themselves to live again. They tell themselves they'll pursue their goals once they feel confident, happy, or completely healed, but life rarely works that way. Often healing happens while you're moving forward, not before. Purpose gives pain somewhere to go. Action creates space for hope to return. Every small decision to keep showing up weakens the grip that pain has on your life. Strength isn't pretending that everything is okay. Strength is allowing yourself to feel disappointment without allowing disappointment to steal your future. It's crying when you need to cry, asking for help when you need help, resting when you need rest, and still believing that this chapter doesn't have to become the entire book. Every difficult experience leaves you with a choice. You can allow it to make you more fearful, more bitter, and more closed off from the world. Or you can allow it to make you wiser, more compassionate, and more resilient. The event itself doesn't determine the outcome. Your response does. Some of the most inspiring people you'll ever meet carry invisible scars. They've faced losses you'll never fully understand. They've experienced failures that nearly convinced them to quit. The reason they inspire others isn't because they escaped pain. It's because they refused to let pain have the final word. They learned to acknowledge their struggles without surrendering their future. And they discovered that courage isn't the absence of suffering, but the willingness to keep taking the next step while carrying it. Every setback carries two things with it. The first is disappointment, and the second is a lesson. Most people notice the disappointment immediately because it's painful, obvious, and impossible to ignore. Very few take the time to search for the lesson because lessons require reflection, honesty, and patience.